Yeah, I have one roster and
You want me to start cutting up
You're gonna
pastries?
start cutting up
Yeah, I'll
pieces.
do that. I'm happy to do that.
So we got like 12 sets of sleeves, 12 hats, and 12 neck boxes.
So we're gonna do
How many do you think?
12 pairs total?
Uh,
Yeah, they did.
they got plate wrapped. Yeah. Chance is frogging up and he doesn't even know what frogging up is. Dude. Chance. Have you ever heard the saying, getting froggy with someone? You're like, come on, that's getting froggy. You're frogging up. And that's skinny. Bring it. This will be the most entertainment I've had in years. Twice. You haven't forgotten that I'm the friend that John first needs to know. And after that, we're not even going to beat you. We're going to just squish you. Come to me, it's arm bar. Hey, Chance, just remember. Nancy Poo, just remember, John and I both got through military self-defense and combat training. And he went through the Marine Corps as a 3 year.
I'm not far from my house.
He's also
That's your lot.
You know, the thing is, here's the fun part. His mom would be totally cool with it.
What makes you?
Because his mom's let me take him across state lines multiple times before I even met her. One's up, one's back. Okay, flight.
Then again, what does that teach you? That way more safe. And you care about my safety more than anyone.
I care about your safety.
So do I.
Oh, wow.
We would need personal protective equipment. You could have actually told me. Maybe some gloves.
Hey, guard, mouthpiece, you know.
No.
Fine, you give them shin guards instead.
Shin guards work.
Okay.
Maybe elbow guards. He does. I mean, if he's going to be a naval officer, he's got to be fixed.
You know, I'm hoping you do go to the academy, and when you get out, I will be the first one to call you and club you up. Lieutenant? Water bar.
Butter bar. Doesn't matter what range. Butter bar. Yeah. The most hated creature on the planet is a butter bar. That's normal.
Love you. Thank you for coming today. What? No. I wish. Okay, guys, we're back setting up for round 3. On our left, we have Jason Acosta. And on our left, we have George Feliciano. It looks like we've got Jason with a Lucario Crobat deck. And George is playing his Exeggutor Slurpuff deck. He's got 2 Swamperts to Archie out with that.
This is oh, I can hear myself. All right. This is interesting because obviously the Exeggutor deck has picked up a lot of popularity over the past couple of weeks, so we get to see it on stream again. Like you said before, a lot of players are playing it today.
It'll be interesting to see because I know these Exeggutor decks tend to struggle with Crobat decks, but that's if they're paired with Landorus.
Right.
But at the same time, Lucario is actually really good against Exeggutor decks, assuming you can dump your items in your Pokemon.
Right.
Because it allows you to
keep
supplement your
drawing.
draw, despite
Yeah.
the fact that you can't play supporters. So I know it's something that some people have been discussing, playing a higher Lucario count in their bat decks. I haven't seen anybody suggest dropping Landorus completely.
Completely right. I mean, I would at least play like 1 or 2.
Right.
All right, so we see
also
2
see that he plays 2 Silent Lab, which
Mulligans.
is really interesting since he doesn't play Landorus.
Right. 2 Silent Lab. Probably just to make that Flareon matchup better, you know, regardless of.
Okay.
So he's mulliganing twice. So Feliciano.
And it looks like our video is not caught up yet, so we're going to restart the stream real quick. There we go. And here we go. We got round 3 starting. We see that George opens with an Execute, and Jason has 2 Zubats and a Lucario.
Right, and this is one of the scary things. Obviously, it's not a factor here, but opening long Execute can open you up to
very easily.
Yeah, being easily knocked out by a laser from Burbank.
We see that Jason has neither a supporter or an energy.
Oh, which is not a good thing.
It pose a big problem for him.
And Jorge has a lot of.
Is it Jorge or George? I always thought his name was George.
George.
I don't know.
I always interpreted it as Jorge. George. Either way, has a lot of cards in his hand because Jason did mulligan about 3 or 2 times.
Right.
All right, so we see a Battle Compressor. It's really good in this deck because of propagation. You can Battle Compress and
there's a
put the eggs right back into your hand, which kind of makes it like a collector.
True.
In a way.
And looking at George's list, he has one of those almost what you would consider a turbo Archie deck, since he has a lot of those items like Acrobike, Battle Compressor, and everything to try to dump as many cards as possible.
Right. Now, since he did start off with a large hand, that's going to be a bit more difficult.
True. It's also interesting to see him discard a Mr. Mime when looking at a Crobat deck that clearly is fighting. You would assume that your opponent plays Landorus unless he has prior knowledge. Like,
you know, we know that he plays no Landorus,
right.
But, you know, you would want to imagine that George does not know that.
You would assume that most Crobat decks you play against that have fighting Pokemon would have Landorus.
Right.
It's a very good card, especially since this deck has gained popularity.
Mm-hmm. And I can't think of any card that you want to keep over Mr. Mime playing against Landorus when you have
very true.
Eggs.
And it looks like he's just trying to dump his hand to get that Archie on turn 1. But he's got quite
Did he put something in his hand with Ultra Ball?
I don't think that was an Ultra Ball. I think it was Computer Search.
Oh, okay. It was Computer Search.
It's hard to tell. He threw the card in the discard pile
with
the cards on top of it.
Yeah, I was like, I hope that was an Ultra Ball because he didn't reveal it.
This is an Ultra Ball, though.
He's clearly trying to get his hand down, I guess, to Archie's.
I mean, I would assume he's trying to limit his hand size. Otherwise, he would be using this propagation to try to
Right.
mitigate the discard effects. And he fails the Ultra Ball. Probably looking for that Jirachi.
Maybe. Doesn't really need Virizion here.
No, most bat decks don't play laser.
Right.
Maybe a
No, I'm
one
saying
of
that. No, I'm saying he
doesn't need Virizion.
George doesn't need Virizion.
Yeah, because most bat decks don't play lasers.
Oh yeah, don't play laser. I thought you said play Virizion.
No, they don't play laser unless
Yeah.
maybe they play a one of if they're playing a heavy Karina count, but
Right. Alright, so he gets one egg back.
he's just looking for a bench Pokemon. He assumes that his egg is going to die. And there's that
And he
Archie.
does get the Archie. So it's a first turn Swampert. Which is interesting that he chose Swampert over Empoleon because Empoleon just works so well with propagation.
I guess he really just likes the ability to search for
Get
what he
any
wants.
one card,
He's
right?
more than likely going to go put that Slurpuff on top of his deck this turn.
Yeah.
And here you can see just how powerful some of these Stage 2 water Pokemon are if you can get them out quickly.
Right.
You know, being able to have an Empoleon or a Swampert out on turn 1 has a lot of potential. And I would say that Swampert is probably stronger than Empoleon on a single given turn.
Right.
And so if he has that Slurpuff immediately, it will more than likely be
Yeah,
better.
2 random cards is nice. 1 guaranteed card is
True.
most of the time
nicer.
always going to be better. Alright, so we see it. Jason doesn't have much of anything.
No, his best play here is probably to try to double
Yeah.
Sneaky Bite that execute on the bench. And that's not really going to do a whole lot for him, but maybe he'll get a supporter off that prize.
Yeah,
Well,
unless,
it looks like, is that an Energy Search in his hand?
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know why you would play
No,
Energy
fighting.
Search instead
No,
of-
it looks
the
like
Fighting
Switch.
Stadium?
Fighting Stadium.
Okay. gonna say, I don't
I
know
thought
why
it
you
might
would
have been a
play-
super scoop up, but it's not. All right, so he did get the Slurpuff.
Did he use Sneaky Bite? I don't see any damage. Oh, he has clear dice, so that's not going to be helpful.
I'm looking.
I
Well,
don't,
who'd he?
I don't even see
who'd
anything
he
that
put
would
it
indicate
on?
that he has any damage on his guys. Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's going to be awful.
Yeah. So, FYI, the active execute has damage on it.
You see a laser on the Golbat. But I wonder why you wouldn't use the Super Scoop Up to just try to kill it.
Kill
You
it,
see the
yeah,
muscle
knock it
growth,
out.
You see that.
I'm not sure.
Now he
And that could have gave him a prize that potentially would have gave him a
Would've been
supporter.
supporter.
Right.
Or something to search for a supporter, maybe. Or an energy. Like, if he had an energy off of that, too, he has no executes on the field. And yes, he's got a Swampert Slurpuff combo going, but what are you really going to do with that?
Right. So,
Whereas now he's got.
yeah, to be honest, this game is in Jason's favor, but the way it's playing out here, like, there's so many things he can do to disrupt George. George has had a really nice start.
Well, it's nice, or it's pretty easy to have a nice start when you're given 3 mulligan cards.
You're right. Yeah, and then they could be given 3 mulligans and still be able to get down to that 1 card in hand is pretty amazing. All right, so now begins the blockade, and at this point, it's top deck mode for the rest. For pretty much, it's going to be top deck mode for a while.
I think it's interesting that he would use that propagation here. Because now he doesn't have any in his discard pile.
Right.
I mean, I guess he just doesn't care about any of the cards in his hand since he can search his deck for anything he needs anyway.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't need Ultra Balls for the rest of the game.
All right, and we see a
quick
scoop.
going to game 2. Multiple turns with no energy and no supporters makes
That
it
must
really
be a
tough.
disturbing way to lose, you know.
Especially since you know that you're locked out of supporters for the rest of the game anyway.
Right. So it would have just been, you know, him shooting himself in the foot if he just sat there and let the game
Right.
go on longer, knowing that George was going to
Would
win.
have just been a really slow death. You can see, I mean, we've already seen today, we saw in the first round that in his first game, Jason Schmidt didn't play a single supporter.
Right.
And that was just because he didn't draw one. I mean, granted, Jason didn't draw one either, but even if
Right.
he had, he wouldn't have been able to use one for the rest of the
Exactly.
game. It's just how powerful Exeggutor can be. It really punishes slow starts. And it stops you from being able to draw out of them. Whereas if it's a Seismitoad, yes, it does a little bit more damage, and it's
Mhm.
not a stage 1,
Mhm.
which are both very big perks.
Right.
But it also still gives you a little bit of room to work with.
And the one of the top things, if you hear about how somebody lost, usually in this game, I didn't see a supporter.
Exactly.
Right? I didn't draw into a supporter when I needed it. I saw no supporters for 5 turns, 4 turns. So supporters are a big deal in this game.
And it's interesting to see how Exeggutor's been around for 2.5 formats now.
Right.
It's just now seeing play. It's something that hasn't had the tools that it's needed. to be good.
Right. And a lot of people are attributing the tools to Archie's, and Trump Card was one of the biggest ones
yeah.
that they said made it
The past
playable.
2 sets have given Exeggutor a ton of cards to work with. Archie's, like you said, Archie's Trump Card, Battle Compressor.
Right, Battle
Compressor's
Compressor.
really good. Let's see, what else does he have in here? I mean, a lot of this looks like typical stuff. He's got a little bit of disruption for his opponent.
Yes.
He has hammers and head ringers.
Silver Mirror for
He has a silver mirror to tech for
Flareon.
That's the heavy Flareon presence. I actually think I would like to see a couple of waters in this list.
Just so if you
have
ever
to attack
need
with
to
Swampert.
attack with Swampert, right?
And again, opening lone execute.
Or maybe I would have went because he plays 2 Swampert. Like, why not go 1 Swampert, 1 Empoleon?
You know, it's a good question.
Yeah.
But if he's got the Slurpuff, and I guess he thinks that that's good enough.
It's good enough, right?
I know right before Florida Regionals, I was testing a Flareon list with 1-1.
1-1.
And it seemed like I would always just go for the Empoleon.
Empoleon
first and
over.
just never get Swampert out.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, I mean, you either make the decision to play a 1-1
One or
Slurpuff
the
and
other.
Swampert, or you just play Empoleon, and you kind of determine if you want to be able to quick search every turn, or if you just want 2 random cards.
Right.
And I think in a heavy disruption-based deck like this, it probably is better,
Mhm.
in some sense, to have,
Both options.
well,
Or just
both
the
options maybe, but I think it's a lot, like you need that enhanced hammer when you need
right.
it. Now, one thing that I know a lot of the Empoleon list play is more disruption than what George has room for, because he has these extra cards like the Slurpuff. Like they would. Also, he doesn't play any Xerosic or Team Flare Grunt, which are very popular cards with this Exeggutor.
All right, so we saw that George opted to go first. We see a bite come down onto the egg on the bench. Because he knows he's going to knock out the active one.
Right.
And a computer
And he
search.
has a much better hand this time.
Right, way better. Getting rid of the fighting stadium because essentially you don't need it. However, you do kind of need it to counter the
Well, he knows
stadium.
he's going to
Stadium.
Sycamore. I don't know why you wouldn't just put it down, I guess.
Right.
Because you're probably not going to play that Ultra Ball that's in your hand.
Yeah.
But,
Depending on if he's going to use every card in his hand.
well, he has a Sycamore, which is more than likely just going to...
Yeah. Yeah, he
So
could have
it's
discarded the Ultra Ball and played
Yeah.
the stadium down.
I mean, it's the same thing if he plays a Stadium to counter, it's in your discard pile either way.
Either way, yeah.
I guess he just thinks that it's a non-factor for one reason or another. He gets the Muscle Band to stop the Head Ringer, which is nice.
Right. And it baits your opponent to put their stadium out earlier because now George can hold his stadium until he needs it.
Well, yes and no. Because if he never puts an EX down, the Fighting Stadium doesn't do anything.
Right.
But at the same time, I guess he just doesn't think it matters. Maybe he has a lot of experience with this matchup, and he knows that his Fighting Stadium almost does nothing, or does nothing.
Little to nothing, right.
I mean, if you can't play supporters, you can't Lysander the EXs up anyway, so...
Now, George does play the Mime down in this game, which now causes me to question, why didn't you play that last game?
Right.
So, we see Lucario is going to be able to use, Corkscrew? The one that lets you draw?
No, it's, yeah, Corkscrew.
Is it Corkscrew Punch?
Because I think the first attack is Missile Jab.
Okay,
It's
so
one of those two.
it's going to let him draw until he has 6, which, again, is something that allows him to mitigate that effect from
Like we said before,
Exeggutor.
we see that Jason has a very heavy Lucario presence in
Right.
his deck.
And Lucario just, fighting Pokemon in general, they do so much damage where it's so easy to hit 100 for little to nothing. And when you compare that with bats, the damage might be too overwhelming for Exeggutor.
And we see both of those Swamperts go to the discard pile again.
And he does play 4 stadiums, so and we haven't seen a Silent Lab yet, and that could be big. One of the good things about eggs is that you just kind of never run out of them because when one hits the discard, you just get it back.
Yeah, it's very hard to bench out an opponent playing Exeggutor.
Right. But I mean, when they do hit the bench, they are targets in this deck because, you know, Crobat just knocks them out in one hit.
And that probably leads into why George didn't put that Execute on his bench.
Right. But it's kind of like you have to in order to win. All right, so the Verbank does come out. And then we do have a laser.
He wants that thing to be asleep, but... no
Yeah,
dice.
but the difference between eggs and Toad is that if you do put them to sleep, they can still get out of it if they have like a super scoop up or a switch.
True. But at the same time, you can't play something like a Pokemon
Right.
Center Lady or an AZ.
Right.
So they both stop different things.
Yeah, true.
Now, if you're in George's shoes here, why wouldn't you put down 2 eggs on your bench, knowing that
Exactly.
your
It
opponent
has
can
can drop a Crobat. I don't know. I was just about to say that. I was about to say, you know, in order to get an egg out, you have to essentially possibly give up 1 prize, which because he has the Crobat. All right.
But being able to... He had an
Maybe.
Ultra Ball in his hand, too. Why wouldn't you...
Go and
Oh,
get.
okay, he's still,
Okay, there he
I was
goes.
like, is he just going to attack?
All right, so the egg gets knocked out, and then
And he's going to scoop.
is this a scoop?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
2 quick games.
2 very quick games. All right, so now we see there because George didn't have a bad start, and Jason didn't have a bad start. So now you see there where the matchup is kind of in the favor of the Crobat player. Now with Toad bats, it's a little different because Exeggutor is very good against Toad because it has the resistance. Toad is weak to it.
That could actually be another reason. Like, Lucario is good against both Toad and Exeggutor.
Right.
So that could be why Jason has chosen to play it instead of Landorus. He doesn't
Oh,
want to have
yeah,
that
true.
weakness, and it naturally does effectively the same amount
Yeah.
of damage against Toad decks, and also allows you to draw around the Exeggutor.
Right.
So it could actually just be a very good meta call. That's a card that most people have written off or just outright said isn't good
Yeah.
right now.
Now, when it first came out, everybody was excited about it, but you know, then people felt like it wasn't.
And then everybody's attention quickly turned to Landorus.
Landorus. But still, I mean, I would still at least have like 1
Oh,
at
definitely.
least.
Definitely.
And then only 2 Hawlucha, and I feel like they play usually more than that
Most
as
of
well.
them play 3.
3, yeah.
But they also, I think, normally only play 2 Landorus, and he has 3 Lucario in here. So he traded those spots a little bit. He's also got some other things in here, like he has Zerosic for Garbodor. Like, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And he has an AZ, which is sometimes in there, sometimes not.
Right. Depends on the player.
Right. But
Same thing
he also plays Headringers. which
Right,
is
and
a
that
little
was
unusual.
interesting. Yeah, and he has 2 of that, which is kind of useless in this
It's
match.
a very weak start weak opener from George this game.
Oh yeah, we have Jirachi, and everybody hates opening Jirachi, but it happens.
That's the one downfall to this deck, is that you have a lot of weak starters.
Right.
Considering you have 4 eggs and a Jirachi. Mr. Mime's not a good opener either.
You don't want. I mean,
So, I
Skrillex.
mean-
like, what do you want to open?
Exactly. That's
I'm
one of
looking
big
at the
problems
list.
with this deck.
Swirlix isn't fun. Virizion is decent, I guess, but still, that's something that's bench
This kind of
support.
seems like every game you feel like you hope you open with 2 Pokemon, so you can choose the lesser of 2 evils,
Evil's right,
depending on what else you have.
but Jirachi is definitely one of the last choices.
Right.
I would imagine in this matchup, if he was playing Landorus, Mime wouldn't be too bad.
True. But at the same time, you don't want your Mime
Watch your
taking
Mime
damage,
getting knocked
so it's
out.
just- That's the one
I would
tough
only
thing about
think,
playing this deck.
and then Virizion can get hit hard from Hawlucha, and
Exactly. You just kind of throw your hands in the air
Yeah.
and hope it comes down.
Swirlix maybe, now that I think about it.
Actually, I've seen some people are playing Emolga in their lists.
Oh, okay.
as a one of. But granted, that means you have
Yeah.
a fairly low chance to start with it, but it is
Yeah.
a very good starter. When you
Lucario
get
still
it.
smacks it for 30, maybe 50 because of the first attack ignores weakness. But it gets out your guys like Parisian and Mr. Mime or
Right.
Swirlix. Mogo used to be one of my favorite cards when Eels was a thing.
He doesn't have a very good hand though. It looks like I believe that's a Silver Mirror in the
Mhm.
middle, and then a Swampert Exeggutor. He just took an energy.
All right, he propagates,
Okay,
attaches,
Muscle
and
Band.
then maybe I thought that band was a Juniper.
Drops a Silver Mirror just to get it out of his hand.
And he passes.
He chooses to hold the Muscle Band in case they execute with the energy on it gets knocked out.
Yeah, because he knows all this is a Lysander, energy, knockout. At least a good thing about the eggs is they do have resistance to
Toad.
Toad, right?
That's one very good thing about it.
Yeah,
It's
so
very
you know,
weak in
Quaking
size
Punch
with
can't just knock you out unless
Right.
they have a muscle band.
Toad. Well, I think that's another reason that this card has suddenly become so good,
Mhm.
is that one of the most popular decks is Seismitoad. And having a card that is resistant to Seismitoad, that Seismitoad is
Mhm.
weak to, that locks the Toad player out of supporters, and you can play Virizion to stop
Right.
lasers. You just completely lock the Toad player out of the game.
Now, yeah. Now, here we see a situation where the Fighting Stadium is actually doing some kind of work.
It's also a
Because
situation
Jirachi's an
where
EX.
having that one Lucario, if it was a Landorus instead, would have been better.
Right.
And again, though, you see Jason with... He chose not to play a Sycamore last turn.
Well, no, he did. He Sycamore last time.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
Never mind then.
All right, so Professor's letter. Could have knocked out the Jirachi if everything was, you know, in one shot, if everything was right, like if he had all the power-ups.
Right.
So he hit him for 50. He's using Ultra Ball. I don't know if he's going to get a Golbat or another Zubat.
I would assume another Zubat. Or maybe another... No, probably another Zubat. Because you
That's
can
what I'm
just assume that
thinking,
you'll
too.
use a supporter to draw into your
Right.
Golbats and stuff. But I find it interesting that he discards the supporter and the VS Seeker. And he hasn't played a supporter yet this turn. It's like
True.
he's just planning on holding onto his hand.
He might have something like a Sycamore.
There's the Zubat. Well, he had a Sycamore. He discarded it. Or I thought
Oh.
he did. And I know he discarded the VS Seeker.
Unless he has another one, which wouldn't be the whole thing. You really don't want to end right here.
Right. Well, we see he has 3 energies, a Super Scoop Up. He has a Crobat in his hand as well. Yeah, he keeps a hand just full of energy instead of using the supporter. I guess because he really
Weird.
doesn't want to lose the Crobat. And he draws 2
Oh yeah, and he has
supporters.
Lucario, so I mean, maybe that's what it was. Oh, well, I have Lucario, but it wasn't the worst play. You know, I like using a supporter every turn though,
I would think so, just because you want to draw another Lucario or
Yeah.
maybe more Zubats.
or Golbats, because you can't get to the Crobat
Yeah, I don't
unless you
think, I
have
don't think
Golbat.
holding onto a Crobat really makes that much sense.
Yeah.
Granted, he just gets to put a 3rd energy down and start mowing through palm trees now,
Mhm.
but we haven't seen any hammers come out of George in any of these games yet.
Right.
And now he's locked out of his eggs too.
George only plays 3 Crushing Hammer and 1 Enhance, which I would imagine they play more than that.
Normally.
Yeah, and he
Normally.
doesn't play any Flare Grunt.
No, like I said, that's what these spaces he's taken up with this Slurp
Yeah.
up line as a cost
Or
of playing Swampert.
0-6.
Nope.
Yeah.
The only disruption he has are those 4 hammers.
Yeah. Which this deck
Well,
needs
he has,
to be
He
disruptive.
has head ringers too. But I
Right.
actually think it would almost be better to be playing the
Hammers.
the hammers or,
Right.
and the disruption supporters instead. Really needs a Verbank here so that he can get another egg out. He can't do much with that head ringer unless he hits some hammers too. He's in a really tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't imagine knowing what I do.
Well,
George
because
is
all of his other executes are in his discard pile.
right.
He can't Ultra Ball for one. He's locked out of abilities. I believe he has 2 executes in there. No, I only saw 1 there.
Yeah, and the Silent Lab is down, right?
Right, so he can't propagate. So, but if he didn't prize one, then I guess he still has 1 in his deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's another interesting thing about Exeggutor is that most people playing the deck actually play a 3-4 line in hopes of not starting with Execute, but still having access to a 4th Exeggutor when you need it.
Right. Which, I mean, with propagation, it does make sense to, for it to be that way.
But what do you Ultra Ball for here?
I'm not
You just
sure.
get the Swirlix to evolve into the Slurpuff next turn and hope you draw well?
I mean, I guess he's going to go aggro.
He's going to start trying to swing a Virizion into a Fighting Stadium, Strong Energy. Or no, he doesn't have the Fighting Stadium
He doesn't
anymore.
have it,
But
but
still, he has Strong Energy and access to bats. Like, it's not going to be hard for him to knock out that Virizion either.
right.
And it also needs 3 energies to attack. That's really tough. Jason actually gets to play a supporter this turn, too.
Oh, yeah, because he had no energy.
Jason double checks because he
Double checks, yeah. Make sure now. Can I really use supporters now? All right, and we see an N, which is unusual. Is it an N or is it a
No,
Karina?
it's a
Oh, it's
Karina.
Karina. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't see.
This is why we encourage people that if you think you will be on stream to use matte
Matte sleeves, so you can see what's going on there. And I like the way they look in matte sleeves anyway. Some people like their sleeve cards look shinier than the normal.
You see those people with the full
Full
art
art.
decks, full reverse hollow, and then they put them in the shiniest as
Shiniest
possible.
sleeves.
Nobody can see what you have in there.
Yeah, I mean that distracts me when I play. Like if I'm playing one of my friends' decks and they have everything full art and shiny, like I'm getting so distracted about how pretty everything is. I'm not paying attention to how to play.
But he grabs a Lucario. He can finally get a Golbat down too.
But at this point, it's kind of like, what do you Golbat? Oh, I guess the active, because he needs another energy to attack.
Yeah, he either Golbats and uses the second attack, or he puts the third energy.
All right, just puts another energy down.
I guess he wants to do that because he's more than likely going to be using that third attack on the
To
Virizion anyway.
yeah. And at this point, I'd be putting damage on the Virizion.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so I can take my last 2 prizes and be done with this game. All right, we see Lysander hit the discard, so it's a VS Seeker away from being bought back.
And there's a Golbat.
Now, did he discard a Crobat to that Ultra
He
Ball? He did, okay.
As opposed
Just
to
interesting.
that energy. I guess he really expects to be disrupted at some point.
Right.
Despite the fact that
Right,
Then he-
because he knows that, okay, you guys play,
Now, why
you
would
play
he-
Crushing Hammer.
he used the Sneaky Bot in the active. Is he planning on using the Corkscrew Punch?
Right, to get more cards in your hand. But at that
But then
point,
why would you put
why
the
would
third
you put the
energy?
right? And he has the energy in his hand,
Yeah.
so
That's interesting.
he has to draw his cards first, I'm guessing.
And he has
then-
another Silent Lab for if that
Yeah.
gets knocked out. And he can also remove his Head Ringer now, too. Oh, yeah, he gets to play some Warriors this turn no matter what. We get to see a Tasting for 2. Into a Muscle Band and a Juniper. And an immediate Juniper. But at this point, unless he draws 4 hammers, I don't really know what he can do.
Yes. Hammer time.
There's one. There is one.
Yeah, I see one in the hand.
That laser could do something, too.
Yeah.
Staying asleep forces Jason to use a Super Scoop Up.
He's
Or
been
just
wanting
pass.
that laser for a long
Oh,
time.
definitely.
All right, we see a hammer. He'll probably target the special energy, if anything.
It's like he's not sure which one to discard.
Yeah, the special.
Right.
Just to make it a bit harder to knock out the Virizion.
Yep.
Laser.
He's
Heads.
asleep. That
Okay.
can be a huge deal.
It could. Now, but remember, he does play Super Scoop Up, and he might have been, because he really hasn't been playing them like that, and he might be saving them for situations like these. Like, if I end up staying asleep, I can Super Scoop Up and just start attacking with my new Lucario. I mean, he's at a point where he's so much ahead, it wouldn't really hurt him that much.
True.
And he would save all his energies. And he would get rid of the head ringer.
Yep. I actually think that even if he gets into a decent position out of this, I think George is going to have a hard time attacking. He's going to run out of energies.
Right.
He has such a low energy count, which these decks normally do. He's already lost, I believe, 2.
And he's not playing the Genesect with
The plasmas.
the plasmas, which is what a lot of them do because it's very disruptive. Genesect gives you another attacker, which could have been helpful in this situation.
It also lets you take Lysander out of your deck, so it effectively fills the same spot.
Right.
But I can understand why that would be difficult to do with this list, since he knows he wants to dedicate 2 bench spots to Slurpuff and Swampert, in addition to potentially a Virizion, potentially Mr.
Right.
Mime. You don't necessarily have, you want a backup egg. You don't really have room to put that down when you have to put 2 bench, or somewhere between 3 and 4 bench spots and support Pokemon.
And we saw in the first game, it works when it works, but when it doesn't.
Well, the problem is, I don't even think it mattered what George was playing the first game. Jason
Right.
didn't do
Just
anything.
didn't do anything.
Although, to be fair, Jason probably would have continued playing the game if he didn't get blockaded.
Right.
So,
All right, we see a heads here, which is good. And another thing I like about Super Scoop is it gives you 2 chances to flip heads if you stay asleep. It's like making your odds a bit better.
true.
Unless you're playing against Toad, of course.
The game could just be over this turn, though, if the Super Scoop Up comes up heads. Or does he have 3 prizes left? No, that's only 2.
He's at 2.
Because he knocked out the Jirachi and 2 eggs, right?
Silent
Oh, he
Light
got
comes
rid of
back
the
down.
Super Scoop Up.
Alright, so he puts the damage on the Slurpuff. So I guess he's just planning on taking a prize this turn and then just saying, okay, I'm going to take a prize next turn, whatever you promote.
I mean, your Lucario probably isn't going anywhere.
Right.
I think you could take a really slow approach here, attach the bench to Xerosic, you're active. And use Somersault Kick. Lucario has very athletic attack names.
Yes. This was a Somersault Kick. One of the fan favorites, Lucario. And probably the first Pokemon that has had 3 attacks since
For a while.
long time, which was surprising because, like we were talking about earlier, they don't even give 2 attacks to Pokemon with abilities. Which is why I like the traits, the alpha traits, because in a way it's a way to give Pokemon two abilities at least, in a way.
Now, why would you sneaky bite the Slurpuff and then not attach? I'm just confused because he's not going to be taking. Or does Slurpuff have 80 HP?
80.
Okay, never mind. I thought I had 90.
No, it has 80. I'm pretty sure it's 80.
It must have, otherwise there's no reason.
Yeah,
to
there's no
sneaky bite
reason,
that.
right.
Unless you just expect to draw a Crobat.
No,
Oh, it
maybe
has
not.
90.
An Andy. Oh, okay.
Maybe his plan now is just to bite it at some point.
Just to bite it
Yeah.
and then knock out
Yeah,
an
knock out
egg.
whatever has to come up.
Yeah, just Crobat,
At that
egg,
point, you force
Crobat.
George to push up.
Yeah.
I mean, you just win the game off Crobats anyway, though, because you can Crobat
Right.
eggs unless they both evolve this turn. Good thing for George, since the Slurpuff didn't die, he will get to see 2 more cards off of that tasting this turn.
Right, which is nice. But he doesn't play any type of, I don't think he's AZ or Super Scoop Up,
Nope.
so both these eggs don't evolve. they're just kind of like sitting ducks.
No, I wonder why he. I guess because he plans on using Juniper, he didn't want a tasting first.
Hmm
We see a crushing hammer and a laser. Just chooses to get rid of the hammer. He thinks his only chance here is if he stays asleep. And he goes to sleep.
Nice. And you know, as you were saying before, Executor has so many things going for it, but you know that 30 HP in this format, it's such a big deal. You know, as much as it has going for it, and that's one of the reasons I'm a little scared. I was a little scared to play it, even though the deck is definitely my playing style, the type of things I like to do.
Well, it's because I know a lot of people would know that you played the Lilligant deck in
Yeah.
Texas Regionals
I
a
like.
few years ago. You like decks that stop your opponent.
Yeah, stop. I don't want you to be able to play Pokemon while you're playing me.
Yet you don't seem to like Seismitoad that much.
I mean, no, I don't because I don't like mirror matches a lot. I like playing lock decks that not everybody else is playing.
That's a very uncommon thing to have. Normally, if a lock deck exists, multiple people will
Multiple
be playing
people,
it.
yeah, true. I mean, if it's popular.
The problem is, no matter what he does this turn, there's just the chance he just loses
Yeah.
to double Crobat.
True.
Or
And
even
you would
Crobat
think
Golbat.
there's 6 eggs. Like, why do you guys only have 30 HP? There's 6 of you.
Well, one of them's cracked and one of them's broken. So they don't
So
count.
they don't count.
And then the other one's pissed off, so he doesn't want to be a part of the group.
Part of the group.
The other 3 only have 10 each.
10 HP. Okay, that's what it is.
Solve this mystery.
Or maybe it's propagation. I mean, 60 HP with propagation would have just been
Oh,
a
it'd be
little
ridiculous.
ridiculous, right?
I mean, I think 40 would be reasonable, though.
It's
Especially
true.
since you printed it in the same set that the Plasma Curum came out.
Right.
But I think executes historically have low HP. I'm pretty sure that the one that was just printed only has 40.
Yeah.
So they had, like you said, I assume with propagation, they just felt like they had to give it
You had to
lower
give it
HP.
30. Same thing with the Magic Carps and the Feebasses, which kind of stinks as well.
Hmm. Oh yeah, like we said before, something like Twins was legal melodic would be better. If Phoebus had 40 HP, melodic would be a lot
Be better, yes. If he just had 50 HP, I'm sure a lot of people would try Melodic out and see what they could do with it.
I have to wonder if there's really anything that George can do from this position. It's another big sleep flip. And another heads.
And another heads.
Wow. But if he has the double bat, it doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
that sleep flip could be largely irrelevant.
Or even a Super Scoop Up.
And we see a Golbat in
We
his
see
hand
one
already, and
Golbat,
he
so
has the
that means
Karina
one egg
Slurpee
is going down.
While the Slurpuff dies there.
Slurpuff goes down.
And
All
there's
right,
the
and then we
Ultra
got to
Ball
see
for
the
Game's
Crobat. He
over.
did discard the one.
Or
Oh, okay,
Lysander.
War Lysander.
He had
And that's game.
plenty of outs there.
Phew.
So Jason takes that game.
All right, so we're seeing this Lucario Bats deck doing work here. And is he going to be 3-0 now?
I believe so.
Okay.
We will say this is all of our games have come from table 4, but being only 3 rounds into a tournament, we will assume that these players are still undefeated. Sitting here with Jason Acosta, who just finished up his third round. You're 3-0 now, right?
Yeah.
And you're playing an interesting bat list. You know, most people, like we mentioned on the stream, that most people will be playing Landorus with these guys, or at least one Landorus. And here it shows that you have just a large Lucario line. Did you come into the tournament with Lucario instead of Landorus on purpose, like for a reason?
There's multiple reasons actually. Well, the first one, I'm kind of new to the game, so I just started up actually in Winter Regionals,
Okay.
and so I don't know much about what you were playing in Florida.
Okay. Okay.
So I
So
don't really have-
where are you from? Are you from Florida?
Yeah, I'm from Florida.
Okay.
I'm from down south.
Gotcha. Okay.
But what happened was I was expecting Seismitoad,
Right.
and that's one of the cards that it's just really tough to get.
Mhm.
So instead of playing Landorus, I didn't want to run into that water weakness and be defendable on like Landorus. I don't want to
Right.
bench it by accident or open up with Landorus. I didn't want to lose. So I kind of wanted to do Lucario, and he's pretty powerful. Like
No,
obviously,
it's definitely a strong card against these lock decks like we just saw against George. Granted, there's arguments to be made for why Landorus is strong against Exeggutor too, but
Yeah.
being able to draw despite not being able to play supporters is definitely a strong thing.
Yeah, I would say also the reason why I couldn't, or why I didn't play Landorus, I just couldn't find him. Because that's
Gotcha.
around nobody wanted to trade him. So
Right.
It's really hard to get. That's pretty expensive too.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
yeah,
A couple other interesting things. You play Headringer, and you play. I know that sometimes these fighting decks will play Headringer as a one-of just because you can search for it with Karina, but you've chosen to play a higher count. Is that just because you want to try to slap it on a Seismitoad before they can Quaking Punch?
Yeah, that's what it was mainly for in any kind of big EX. What was another? It was Seismitoad, and I think I was slightly worried about Polygenesis Grizzly. I'm not sure. I never
Okay.
played against that deck either. So like,
Right. It's something it's seen a rise in popularity, but it seems like it's more contained to the north.
Yeah.
Nobody really plays it in Florida, and I guess that's potentially due to the fact that we have a lot of Flareon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and it's a pretty powerful card. It can really like stop your opponent for like a turn, or just,
Mhm.
like it really helps you out.
definitely.
I also played. I just want to say I also played Lucario just because of the drawing. Like,
Right.
I felt like if I did go up against Eggs, I never contested against them, but I just wanted to make sure that I was always getting a fresh 6 cards, even if I couldn't use my supporters. Even though they play hammers, I was just kind of hoping to just try to dodge that.
Well, we saw one play during your game where you chose to Ultra Ball away a Sycamore and a VS Seeker instead of playing the Sycamore.
Yeah.
And was that just because you had so many energies in your hand and you didn't want to discard them?
That, and I was kind of anticipating getting locked next turn. I can't remember the exact situation.
Right. I mean, I know you ended up using Corkscrew Punch and drew up to 6 anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was
but-
trying to go for.
It was just at that point I think you Ultra Balled and you got a second Zubat. So your field was Lucario with 2 energies, Zubat, and you had an opportunity where I believe you also played a Professor's Letter that turn, where you could have Sycamored and only discarded maybe 1 energy. It might have been 2. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And
the energy count in the deck is pretty small.
True.
It kind of scared me after my game 1. I noticed I was kind of flying through my energy a lot, and it was kind of making me scared because I don't play trump cards. So I
Right.
was like, if I lose all my energy, it's pretty much
Okay.
scoop time. But
So what have you played against so far?
round 1, I went up against. Round 1 it was really weird. It was like a Seismitoad deck, but it had Malamar with Manectric. It was kind of toolboxy. So that was pretty interesting.
Did they play Aromatisse?
No, it didn't play Aromatisse.
Really?
It actually played Bats. So it was kind
Huh.
of like, yeah, it was kind of like all around. But it did pretty good. The Malamar, because I don't play any kind of switching card
Right.
or any kind of Keldeo or anything like that. Half the time, like this game also, I just stayed asleep because Eggs just kept me asleep, and yeah, that was
Okay. What about your second round?
Second round was Eggs. That was the very first time I've actually ever played against Eggs, and it was pretty like. The first game went pretty okay. Like it flat out went alright, just because of I just got like the bat set up pretty early, along with Lucario, and yeah, that like game 1 went pretty alright, and then game 2 I actually started seeing the power of it,
Right.
just like not being able to use my supporters, and but I kind of got around it eventually.
Okay. Well, that's something we mentioned that Lucario, like you said, being able to draw even under a supporter lock is actually a really good effect if you're playing against Exeggutor. It's not necessarily as good against Seismitoad because it's harder to dump your hand when you can't play items, but I mean, you can definitely see where Lucario is really strong. The last question I had about your list actually is the choice to play 2 Halucha instead of 3, which has seemingly become standard in most of these fighting decks. Did you feel like you wouldn't need the Halucha just because Lucario is strong in many of the same situations?
Oh no, I definitely wanted Halucha.
Oh.
Nobody in my area. It was either order cards, which weren't going to get here in time, or try to hunt down somebody that had one, and absolutely nobody had one. So
Gotcha.
I was kind of stuck in a position. So like that was
Okay.
the only part.
Well, if you were to have had that third Halucha, what would you have taken out of your deck? Like,
It's really tough, honestly. Like the space.
I can see that a lot of your cards are really tight counts.
Yeah, like my supporter line, I have like a lot of one-ofs that I kind of really wanted to keep. Like the
Right.
easy, just in case I couldn't super scoop up, and the Sorosic for Seismitoad ran into it. Basically, I didn't want to be stuck in a position where I'd be quaking punch like multiple turns and not be able to do anything. And so far, it's worked out pretty okay. So I guess probably
yeah,
what
yeah.
I would change is
Actually-
probably maybe minus a DS Seeker.
Really?
Yeah, that's probably the only thing I can think of.
Okay.
At least
That
right now.
you actually brought up another good point. You don't have a Jirachi in your list, and is that because you expect to not be able to use it, whether it's because of Garbodor or your own Silent Labs?
I owned one. Like I had a buddy let me borrow one, and at the very last second, I was like, I don't want to pull one in because I didn't want to worry about. I've had bad experiences before with Jirachi. Like if
Right.
I played Jirachi in my deck, and all the time it's Lysander, Jirachi game.
Right.
Like great. Yeah, so like I just kind of relied on the VS Seekers. Really,
Okay.
couldn't really.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming and talking to us, and good
Oh,
luck
yeah.
in your future rounds.
Thank you.
Okay, that's round 3, guys. We'll be back for round 4 in a little bit. These will probably. Just a second. This actually isn't my Twitch account, but I'm pretty sure she's gonna upload it. Yeah, it'll show up on YouTube. YouTube? Yeah.
We graduated!
I think so. The cooler under the table at the end should have water in it.
Did they say anything on the chat?
A couple of comments here and there, but not too much. But we have like 50 people watching. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Didn't expect to get a ton, since I thought that there were only going to be a couple of, like maybe us and one other stream today. And I guess there's like 4. So, I mean, I know people can watch more than one at once, but
They jump between rounds, probably. That's what I would do. I don't really have one that is the one that I'm actually following, but while I wait.
change this.
What do you want to put?
Does this background have to be black? Because it's showing through right here. It'll make it hard to read this. Why is it not letting me change it? Oh, never mind. That's not.
That's the big deal again. Like right click on the.
So the problem is, I think what I'm clicking on is the overlay, and that's not what I want.
Okay, I'll just select everything tonight. Yeah, everything. Go ahead. Just make sure. There's nothing, so that nothing is visible. Right now. Or is there like properties or anything? Nothing. You can probably then add an image.
Oh, that's why. That's why. Okay. I'll make it work. Oh, we have somebody watching from Italy.
Really? Wow. Welcome.
How you doing?
Oh, that's good.
What happened?
Marty DQ at Junior.
DQ to junior? Oh, never mind. That's much more readable than I thought it was.
Okay.
It just gets a little fuzzy right there.
White. Why don't you change that part to white?
Because I wanted the rest of it. I wanted to match everything else.
Players, that is time. Players, that is time.
Right way to do what? Right way to stack your deck?
This is not the place.
See, the problem is that will be the only thing in white.
What you can do is look at your bets in white too.
I don't know if that'll show up in the pink though. I guess it looks okay. Okay, that'll do. How soon round 4 gonna be going up?
I would say 10 minutes. They just call it.